Hey YouTube, what's going on? My name is Tyler Adolfo, and I am morbidly obese. Less than 2 years ago, I was around 160 pounds. That's the weight that I was at when I was entering my senior year, and by the end of the year, I was 270 pounds. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about some of the factors, events or circumstances, whatever you want to call them, that I was dealing with senior year that to some degree contributed to the poor decisions I made. At the same time, though, I want to pause right there because I don't want to cause any confusion or try to project blame onto something else. Like, I'm someone who believes that destiny is a matter of choice, like William Jennings Bryan would say, and I don't want to cast aside the responsibility because I'm the one who made the poor decisions in response to adversity. My hope is that this video can serve as a sort of warning for other people about just how quickly things can change if you make bad decisions. Because I was the person who would say that, senioritis is a myth. When I was going into my senior year and I would hear people talk about, oh, you better watch out for that senioritis. It sounds like some kind of STD that people were contracting. I thought it was a bunch of ridiculous nonsense. The way that I saw it was like, these people saying that, like, oh, senioritis made my grades drop, senioritis made me gain all this weight. I saw it as a bunch of procrastinators and slackers making excuses. And maybe I was right about that, and it just turns out senior year I became one of those very people that I was criticizing. The embodiment of hypocrisy. Look, I've never said I was perfect, and I'm perfectly okay with that. I mean, the part of the reason I'm making this video is the hopes that I can get things going in the right direction and help inspire other people to maybe do the same. So let's get right into it. Let's start off with reason number one. Going into my senior year of high school, I was hoping that I would be able to do track and field again, but I actually wasn't able to. The reason why for that is I aged out of sports my senior year. And some context here is necessary. I know you're probably wondering, you aged out of sports? What do you mean? You're in high school. I actually had a dropout period of 2 years that, kind of increased my age without me actually advancing in high school. So when I ultimately returned to high school my junior year, that was actually my last eligible year. So when I returned to high school after a 2 year dropout period, I did a year of track my junior year, and my weight was maintained. I entered at 160. I left junior year at 160. No problemo. And then senior year comes along, and I find out that I'm not allowed to do track anymore. And this is key because this is where I decided to make the wrong decision. Instead of finding an alternative to track and field that I could do on my own time, I kind of took it really personally and to heart. And I was also taking like 5 APs that year and working. That's another story. And all that stress combined kind of just contributed to me eating a lot more when I was home and in my free time. Instead of exercising, I would be at home eating. Whenever I wasn't eating, I was either working or working on AP work. And this was just an incredibly unhealthy situation for me. The pounds came on super fast. I think within like the first month, I probably gained 20 pounds. I was at like 180-ish. And by the time of the start of next semester, I was already in like the 220 range. And so I had already put on 60 pounds just through one semester of school. And at this point, it should have been like a huge, newsflash to me. Like, hey, what's going on here? Your stomach's getting a lot bigger there, Tyler Adolfo. But I didn't really think anything of it. So that's reason number one, is that I aged out of track and did not find a substitute for my exercise regimen. Reason number two is there was actually a lot of animosity between the administration and myself, and this also requires some brief context. When I went into high school, everything was bad kind of right from the start. I didn't have the copy paste perfect 4.0 GPA, perfect attendance high school career. It just wasn't my story. When I went into ninth grade year, I was bullied severely for a myriad of reasons, and it took a heavy toll on me, and eventually it got to the point where I started skipping school, and eventually that exacerbated, and it got to the point where I was skipping school entirely. I believe I like missed the entire second semester of my first ninth grade year. So I had to repeat the ninth grade. And this is something that stuck with me throughout my entire high school career. So even like as I went on and started becoming more accomplished academically and in extracurriculars, both inside and outside the classroom, it always stuck with me that ninth grade year. I never saw the grades from that year as legitimate because I felt like the school was punishing me for being bullied essentially. But I turned things around quickly. I actually went into my sophomore year right after that and got high honors, straight A's, and got elected president of a class that I was part of for only 1 year. And things kind of went uphill from there. At the end of that sophomore school year, I know this is a lot of context, so I'm really sorry. Just to be clear, we're still on the animosity with administration. I'm just explaining the timeline of how that came to be. So I stayed back ninth grade year, had to repeat. And then my sophomore year, I'm with this new class. I got elected class president of it. And then at the end of sophomore year, at this point in time, I was still like arguing with the school, like, hey, is there anything we can do about these 6 Fs from freshman year? Because as you know, I was badly bullied that year and it was just a very uncomfortable situation. Is there any way that we can nullify or, stricken those 6 Fs from the record and instead only count the grades from my second ninth grade year? And the school was not having that. They would always say, like, oh, that wouldn't be fair to other people if we were to do that. And because of that, regardless of how well I did in my classes, I could get straight A's in everything, higher grades than the people who are ranked 1, 2, 3 in the class, and I would still be 40 in class rank because of those 6 Fs. And this followed with me, when I dropped out. And then ultimately, when I returned from my dropout period, this also was an issue that I took right back on because it was important to me. I know it's just an arbitrary number, but it just really, really messed with me. And so senior year, I was taking 5 APs, and it eventually got to this point where I was like, why even bother trying? Why should I do this anymore? Why should I work so hard to get these high marks in AP classes on top of working and on top of representing the school in competitions, which I'll get to later? And in turn for that, the school wouldn't work with me at all on this problem from ninth grade year that just really struck a chord with me. And that was severely affecting my anxiety and causing depression. They just wouldn't work with me on it. And so at some point my senior year, I kind of threw in the towel and decided, you know what? If they're going to do that, I'm just, pretty much not going to come here. I'm just going to come in, do my tests, whatever. I'm going to wait for my new opportunity at college where I can prove all them wrong. I'm going to graduate 40 in the class at Bartlett. There's nothing I can do about that. But when I go to college, I'm going to graduate summa cum laude, top 5% of the class, and that will be my sort of vengeance, my way of getting back, right? The best revenge is success. But that had a lot of negative consequences because as I was skipping school and, now getting lower grades than I normally would, I was also at home even more. And that was depressing to me. I ultimately love learning. I just didn't feel respected by the school and it didn't feel like a comfortable environment for myself. And I stayed at home even more and started putting on a lot more weight because I started, eating more, moving less, that whole jazz. So that's reason number 2 is just the despair that came along with feeling like you've been wronged and that it's beyond your control and there's nothing you can do about it. I had fought it for, my first, 2 freshman years and then my sophomore year. And then there was a dropout period where it was kind of like lurking in the back of my mind. And then when I returned, had an amazing junior year. It was still there in my mind. And then senior year. And I just couldn't get over it. At some point I should have realized that, they're never gonna, have an epiphany and change their mind on this. And I allowed it to affect me to the detriment of my weight. Reason number 3 is that even though I was not going to school too much senior year, I believe I missed more than half the school year. I was representing the school a great deal through extracurricular activities. Senior year was actually my first year of doing DECA, and I managed to win like first in the district, and then I got first in the states, and then I went to ICDC. And then in addition to that, I was also doing a speech competition. I had advanced through the club stage, the zone stage, the district stage, the regional stage, and made it all the way to the finals. And I actually have my performance of the finals in a separate video if you want to check that out. And so not only am I dealing with like the stress of, I'm never even in school because I feel like there's no point and I can't do track. I am going to graduate 40 regardless of what grades I get in my 5 AP classes, and feeling like I have nothing to look forward to when I wake up in the morning. I also kind of just suddenly took on these competitions on top of my work schedule where I was pushing carts from 4 to 11 p.m. And the combination of these certainly didn't alleviate any stress. If anything, it made me feel like I had no time for anything else, which isn't true. There were things that I could have done to reduce my schedule and make time for exercise and other things, but I didn't. I became like obsessed with the idea of doing well in DECA and the speech competition because I felt that these were things that were within my control. That regardless of what the school thinks, there's nothing they can say in order to affect that. I get what I deserve. I did so well in these competitions because of the work that I put in, and nothing the school can say can affect that. So these three reasons combined, I aged out of track, animosity and bitterness with school administrators, and the combination of performing in extracurriculars as well as working a job while skipping school, all kind of culminated in this terrible, very high calorie recipe that put on tremendous amounts of weight for myself. The reality that I've had to come to realize is that when you are 100 pounds higher than your BMI, that your odds of suffering a heart attack or heart disease are astronomically higher, right? My chances of getting heart disease or contracting fatty liver disease are, tremendously higher today than they were less than 2 years ago because of those decisions I made. So I hope that the lesson that can be taken away from this story of how things change so quickly in one school year, remember I went from 160 to 270, is that even though you can't control exactly what happens to you, you're always in control in how you react to it. So you can't control what circumstances you're faced with, what obstacles you're presented with, but you can always control how you react to and overcome them. And I think that's an important thing to keep in mind, right? This William Jennings Bryan notion that destiny is a matter of choice and it's up to you. There were so many better actions I could have taken in response to this adversity. Instead of track, I could have just found an alternative. I could have done jumping jacks in this room that I'm making this video from. Reason two, I could have just thought about things long term, said, you know what, I shouldn't skip school, out of spite, and I should just stay in, and you know what, they're going to say what they're going to say, but I'm going to do what I'm going to do, and I'm looking forward to the future. Boom, boom, those two things, not great off the bat. And number three, I could have just found more balance in my life, and maybe that would have actually resulted in me performing even better in these competitions and in school. So never feel like there's only one option. And sometimes the tougher thing to do is to man up and put yourself in a position where you may not always feel comfortable. And that's what I would have had to done had I done things differently. But looking back, I really wish I did, because it's not worth being 110 pounds heavier today than I was back then. And so now let's get to my purpose in making this is I want to hold myself accountable here. Going forward, I need to get this weight off, and soon. We're in a quarantine right now where there's not a whole lot going on. And even though I'm fortunate to have work, this is still a great opportunity for me to try to get some self-improvement with respect to my weight as well as mental health. And I don't want to let that opportunity go to waste. I want to take advantage of this opportunity. I don't want it to sound like that. There's a global pandemic and I'm talking about taking advantage of opportunities. No, what I mean by that is kind of the saying from that movie Braveheart, where Edward Longshanks says, "You cannot. A good king finds the best of even a bad situation." That's kind of what I'm looking at it as. I'm going to utilize this opportunity to start losing weight. For those of you who are new here and maybe want to follow me along with this journey, I'm not going to be posting like weight loss update videos every week, but you will see through my videos whether I am making progress or not. I upload twice every single week, Monday and Friday, and sometimes on Wednesdays. And I hope that you'll come along and consider subscribing. If any of you have any weight loss stories you want to share, you can leave a comment down below. I want to hear from you. And thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I'm sorry if this went on really long. I kind of have to stop now because my neighbor's being a little bit loud. But he's probably annoyed and can hear me. Thinks I'm crazy, like talking to myself. But I appreciate all of you watching. And I'm going to get this weight off. I swear on my life and my love of it. Peace out. Love and light to all of you.